Well, Bree Lafferty joins us now on Near Death Network. I'm so pleased to have you here. I followed your story, had a wonderful talk with your sister and your mom yesterday, and so glad that you survived yet another episode in your long list of medical episodes to be with us today. Let's go back to the beginning for you. I mean, because as a child, you experienced a chronic, incurable disease, right? Um,
Yes.
how did that define the early part of your life?
Yeah, so I started experiencing symptoms when I was 10, and they were really weird. A lot of cramping in my forearms and my calves. And then I had this weird arm flutter and, thought maybe it was growing pains, growing twitches. Maybe I'd be tall like my dad. I was not. But we didn't know. And so just kind of let it go. And it would continue to progress. It then switched to my other arm, both legs. My neck started
How old
twitching.
were you when it manifested initially?
10.
10.
10. And as I progressed through my prepubescent years, we thought maybe it was just weird hormones going on, but things were getting worse. I began cramping more and like Charlie horses beyond my calves in my hands and my forearms. And then my neck started cramping and my back, and things just really started hurting. Then I would also just tremble. My body would shake for 20 minutes, and everyone would think I was just freezing and throw blankets on me and coats. And I'm like, I'm not cold, but we didn't know what it was. So we started seeing doctors around 14 or 15 years old, and they weren't really sure. They kind of gave a few separate diagnoses and suggestions and started throwing pharmaceuticals at me without a diagnosis. None of them really helped, and I was getting worse and worse and worse. And by the time I was 15, I was in a lot of pain now. Not only the cramping, but also I felt like my body was this Christmas tree. And all the lights, there are some twinkly ones, and there are some ones that stay stationary on some trees. But instead of beautiful twinkly lights, it was pain signals. And I was just constantly in this pain. And they'd go to do testing, and I'd say doctors would say, you can't have pain cross the body like that. We're not doing the test. So I started on pretty early saying, this can't happen. It's in your head. You're twitching because it's a conversion disorder. It's psychogenic. With also some real diagnoses like myoclonic jerks, neuropathy, some like actual. So
Neurological symptoms.
Yeah, so it was very confusing. But by the time I was 16, I realized they didn't know what was wrong, and all the tests were coming back negative. I didn't have Lyme disease or West Nile or some parasite. I didn't have MS. My brain scans were normal. My blood tests were normal. Things were normal, and each test would become so much anxiety for me because I'd go in and just waiting with anxiety, like, is this one going to come back negative too? And they all did. So at 16, it's getting worse and worse and worse. They don't know what's wrong. I am miserable. I'm not sleeping. I'm an insomniac. My body is failing me at every turn. And I just know from my gut that I'm going to die before I reach the age of 28. And I share this with my mom, and she takes me really seriously. And that is my first brush with mortality.
So how quickly thereafter did you have your near-death experience?
It would take.
Well, first you had did you get the diagnosis
I did get the
first?
Diagnosis, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I got the diagnosis at 18 of myoclonus dystonia. And my mom was a huge advocate on always pushing and making sure, we didn't give up. When I gave up, she wouldn't. And when she gave up, I wouldn't. So we had this beautiful connection of pushing forward. And when I was done with doctors, done with the medical industry, she's like, let's please go one more time. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to tell them anything. They're not going to get any of your records. You're going to be a blank slate. And we go, and I get diagnosed at Anschutz. And it was like, oh my gosh, there's a diagnosis, there's hope. Except for there wasn't. Because they're like, you've already tried all of the medicines we'd recommend. This is extremely rare. I have never seen a case of this. My colleagues haven't seen a case of this. And I looked, I think, sometime within the last year, and it's still diagnosed as less than 1 in a million.
Wow.
So even though I had a diagnosis, there was no hope.
So then how does the event happen in your life that precipitates your first crossing over, which is not the end of the story?
So after the diagnosis, it was basically, I was on my own, which I kind of felt like I was on my own anyway. And I decided I was just going to do my best to live the best normal possible life. And I finished school, I started college, I bought my first house at 19, flipped that, and in that time period, I am getting sicker. Obviously, it's not obvious yet, but I'm getting sicker with myoclonus dystonia. And I'm just trying really hard to survive and flip my house, go to school, do the things, try to have healthy relationships, which was pretty unsuccessful because I didn't think anyone could love a sick person. And so that was pretty detrimental at the time too. But when I sold my house, we had already tried not only conventional medicine, but holistic medicine, alternative medicine. We tried Chinese herbs. We tried Reiki, chiropractic, massage, acupuncture, meditation. The list really is very extensive. And nothing provided me that much relief. So when I sold my house, I decided it was going to be the end. I just knew that in my heart and my soul that I was going to die. So I ran away 1,600 miles away from everybody, my family, my friends, and everything, to go die alone. And I ran.
Where did you go?
San Antonio, Texas.
Oh. Why did you pick San Antonio?
The first childhood memories that were really happy and playful for me were in Austin, Texas.
Oh.
So I think I was just drawn back to that location. I found a beautiful luxury apartment at North San Antonio, overlooked the pool, beautiful apartment, overlooked the hill country. And I still continued because I wasn't sure I was going to die. I had this feeling. So I still tried to live my life. I did spelunking when I could. I explored the city when I could. I sought help when I could. My mom, of course, never gave up, and she was also looking for answers. And there was, I think, the beginning of April, and I started getting really sick. And things go.
What year was this?
2017.
Okay.
I get really sick. I end up, so I'm a major insomniac. 3 days of no sleep.
That's so tough.
Not a cat nap, not a shut-eye for 10 minutes here and there, zero sleep for up to 3 days at a time. And I was pretty functionable because I'd suffered insomnia since 10. And so I was an insomniac. My myoclonus dystonia was extremely painful and just really fatiguing. And in these myoclonic episodes, I would hit myself, I would hit the wall, I'd hit chairs, I'd drop things. So I beat myself up literally and other people. My poor family, they'd just try to be there and support me, and I'd end up hitting them in the face on accident and kind of felt so bad. But I couldn't control it. And these things were so strong that at 15 years old, when I was about 100 pounds sopping wet, my dad, who worked out every day, he big, tall, 6'2", he would try to, help me not hit myself and hit things, and he'd bear hug me out of love, not like.
Of course.
Yeah. And I would break free.
Wow.
If I tried to do that in the best shape of my life, there's no way I could break free from that.
Wow.
But this myoclonus was so powerful that I would break free through his grasp. So that's how painful hitting stuff was. And I'd be bruised and never broke anything on me, luckily. So my parents know that I'm not doing very well, and they book a flight to come see me as I'm getting worse and worse. I now have the flu on top of the insomnia and the myoclonus dystonia. I've got the flu, and they book a flight. They can't get one for 3 days. My mom and I are on the phone in prayer. And on 2 in the morning, San Antonio time, April 27th, 2017,
You transitioned?
I couldn't do it anymore. Yeah.
So you said, I'm done?
Yeah, I told, my mom was on the phone with me praying, and I said, I'm going to try to get some sleep. And I knew that wasn't going to happen for me, but I knew she needed to hear that.
She wouldn't hang up
She
unless
wouldn't
you
hang
said
up.
that. Yeah.
And so I hung up the phone, and I am just lying there, and I'm exhausted. And I am exhausted from a level that I couldn't be on to explain at the time.
Right.
But it was an exhaustion on a soul level, on a physical level, on a mental level, on an emotional level. And this had been going on for 15 years. The insomnia, the pain, just everything. And there was no hope. I'd already been told by conventional medicine that there's no hope, and alternative medicine wasn't helping. So that moment is when I called out. I didn't even know who I was calling out to, but I called out to this higher power, this God, this creator. And I said, I can't do it anymore. It's in your hands. I give up. And at that moment, everything went silent. Things were ripped from me. The pain was ripped from me. The muscle aches were ripped from me. The chatter in my head was ripped from me, and it was silent and peaceful and serene for the first time in my whole life on this planet.
So this is when you start your near-death experience. So
Yes.
how does that manifestation progress? Is it the typical light in the tunnel? I know it's not, because I've heard your story, but you tell it in your own words and how it happened for you.
Sure. So after that, drastic change from sickness and exhaustion and giving up, it was just so peaceful and serene. Like, I could have laid there like that indefinitely. Like, it was amazing, but it didn't stop there. I started feeling like this tapping on the palms of my hands and my feet, and I used to describe it as spiritual surgery, and I have no idea what I meant by that, but that's kind of what I thought of. And then I heard this big booming voice. It wasn't external, it wasn't internal, it was just there, and it said, "Are you ready?" I didn't hesitate to say yes. Something answered my prayer. Yeah, of course I'll be ready. Let's go. I don't know. And as soon as I said yes, I felt 3 hard pounds on my chest, and I felt my heart stop. And from that moment, right after that, I was instantly detached from my body. And I didn't know of anything called Bree. I didn't know of humanity. I didn't know of Earth. I was in this beautiful, black, fuzzy love darkness. I mean, it was black, but it wasn't like scary. It wasn't, like the darkness you go into in a cave. It was just,
it enveloped you, and it
Yeah.
felt safe and
it was
wonderful.
just loving energy. And there was so much energy there. I knew that there was the creator with me, and he was the one that had saved me from whatever. Even though I wasn't sure about this transition, I wasn't sure what I wasn't sure where I was then. I wasn't familiar with this earth, but I was still conscious, and I didn't know where I was, but I didn't really question it either. My consciousness knew something had changed, and I did think, am I dead? And 3 monks appear out of blackness, cross-legged, and look like Tibetan robes, even though I didn't know what Tibetan was, like
No frame of reference.
No frame of reference. Yeah. And they just smile at me with a shit-eating grin. Like, if you only knew. And I was like, that's curious. All right. And they just disappear back into the darkness. And after they disappeared back into the darkness, that's when I enter my tunnel. And my tunnel is this bright, vivid blue. And it is so bright, vivid blue that it's almost white. And in the tunnel, I'm kind of going through it very, very fast, horizontally, kind of, that ways. And I'm being downloaded with binary code. There is binary code all around me in this tunnel, and my soul's being downloaded with it. I don't know what it is exactly. I just know it's really important information that will come to me later when I need it.
So for people, binary code in numbers, in sequences or random, or what?
maybe I should learn binary code and, maybe pull out what it was. But yeah, so I can kind of compare it to if you've ever been down a tube water slide and you can see the sun coming through it. And let's say they painted or there's lit up ones and zeros on it and you're going through it super fast. You can't really make it out, but you can tell there's ones and zeros at moments. So tons of ones and zeros. I'm positive it's in a beautiful orchestrated sequence, but I don't know binary code. I don't know how to read it or navigate it. So it wasn't just like one here and a zero there. It was,
Right. So it wasn't a revelation that this is the omniscient. These numbers mean you're great. You're now in heaven. Or,
nope.
no.
It was just, this is information, and I'm being downloaded with information, and that's as far as I got there.
So what was next?
Next was this white space and just bright white everywhere. No floors, no windows, no doors, no ceilings or anything. The only time in my experience that I had a human-like body. And in front of me is this huge pile of black numbers. And behind me, I can tell that is the presence of an ascended master teacher. And I think because of my religious upbringing, I recognize him to be Jesus, but I also recognize that it could be any ascended master teacher.
Right, it was the archetype you were familiar with.
Yes, exactly. I didn't see this being. I could feel him though, and felt masculine. And in front of, I think I was talking to him. Maybe I was talking to the creator, but I throw up these numbers in the air like childlike throwing up a block of Legos. No wonder you love creating. And I realized the universe was created with math.
Right, sacred geometry.
Yeah, I was, I liked math as a kid, but I didn't become a math nerd. Yeah. I didn't go to school for math. Never had a bunch of math in my career or anything. So the fact I had so much binary and these numbers and math, I think it's so funny and so ironic because I'm not a huge mathematician or math whiz or anything.
Right, and it wasn't your language.
It wasn't my language.
Favor to throw a bunch of numbers and I'm supposed to dissect it, but you had a knowing.
Yeah, I absolutely knew from my core that the universe was created with math. And I just found that absolutely fascinating. And I think it was not necessarily the numbers. I think it was more so the information of how the universe was created. Constructed.
Yeah. And did that help, or was your sense that those numbers helped alleviate whatever the condition was that ailed you, or did it not have a correlation to what you were going through?
So the big pile of numbers, I didn't have a correlation, but my tunnel, the binary code, actually came into play after my NDE experience.
Well, okay, so how does this one end? Because it's not the last one you experienced. So how does this wrap up and how do you emerge from this experience?
Yeah, so I end up in two more places. One is with other beings. And in this place, it is just pure curiosity and joy. It is kind of reminiscent of Earth, even though I'm still not familiar with Earth. I no longer have the human-looking body. No one does. I'm with other beings, and it's like a playground. It's like a spiritual playground.
So if they don't have bodies, they present as a sense of spirit, and you acknowledge their spirits based on their blueprint, as it were? Or?
So I guess I should say they didn't have human bodies.
Gotcha.
They had different kind of
forms,
and they were kind of more like doll-like. I was a robot at one point. I was a snowman. I was a doll like them. It was really a place of instant connection. We're all one. We moved as one. We played as one. But yet we're also doing separate things. So I think the big learning lesson in this place was just the thought creation, how our thoughts create reality. And for me, it was so instantaneous. I saw beings sliding on snow-covered trees, and I'm like, I don't think I like snow. But they all crossed through a barbed wire fence. There was an opening, and I wasn't allowed to go. I wasn't asked. I didn't get a choice. It was just a knowing that I couldn't go with them. And I end this NDE experience in this dark room with this beautiful scroll, beautiful golden script in front of me. And that's when suddenly, I guess I wanted to remember that I was once human and humans have egos. And it came back and said, you're showing this to a human. And they're like, okay, no, we're not. Rolled up the scroll and sent me back to my body.
So then you come back, and are you cured then?
So I didn't know at the time that I had a healing at that moment, but I ended up in a 4-day coma 6 months later. And I did not have another NDE. I had an out-of-body experience. I just saw myself looking down at this poor looking girl with blue tubes coming out of her mouth. And that was later confirmed by my mom. That's what I look like. But we didn't know if it was the coma that had ceased the symptoms because of the damage to my brain, or if it was the NDE. My mom, I didn't know much about NDEs. My mom has always been on the background helping me with metaphysical and holistic things. And she was the one who kind of helped me process the NDE and let me know that this was a valid experience. And we didn't know if it was the NDE or the coma, but about a year and a half later, I've realized that, oh my gosh, I don't have any of the symptoms of myoclonus dystonia anymore. And whether it was the NDE or the coma, I was so excited. I thought it was the NDE because of the 6-month time frame of no symptoms. And I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do with this information. I was like, okay, now I can be the best version of myself. I can now actually achieve all those things I wanted to. I can achieve that relationship. I can achieve that career. I can do all this stuff because I have no limitations. So I went back to my old ways. I went back to my old thoughts, my old feelings, my old actions, and in that laid my old illness. And it came back. Myoclonus dystonia came back, and it came back with a vengeance. Less than 2 years.
So then how does Joe Dispenza come into the final liberation from this once and for all?
Yeah, I love the marriage of what I've learned with Joe Dispenza and other meditators, the near-death community, my own experiences. So it's getting worse and worse, and I was just, okay, well, now I'm a liar, now I'm a fraud. It's all right. Jeff Mara wasn't huge at the time. Oh, he is now, but
nobody will know.
No one will know. Cool. But I felt like a failure and a fraud, and I was like, okay, I don't know why it came back. Maybe I just had remission, which doesn't do remission, not for 2 years or a year and a half.
Right.
But it got to the point where I lost my dependence, and I was trembling so bad I couldn't type, I couldn't text, couldn't do my eyeliner, which I love, and put on earrings or button things, could hardly walk or navigate stairs. Obviously, the myoclonus part was also pretty horrific, and I just ended up in full-blown non-epileptic seizures, and I had to leave work. My mom found a lady my age who was going for her second experimental brain surgery, a deep brain stimulator, and she got me in. My mom found this gal, they communicated, and this gal talked to her doctor, and the doctor is like, I want her, get her in. And I think he's the only specialist on the west side of the US with myoclonus dystonia, and he's had great success stories. So I go and see him, and I'm just like fully can't sit still, and he's just so empathetic, and he's so sorry for me that no one's offered me this brain surgery. And he gets me rushed into brain surgery. It's life-saving at the moment. Rushed is now not my term anymore after what happened this week. Yeah. But 3 months, I was scheduled as soon as I could fit in the schedule, 3 months. So I saw him, and 3 months later, a week later, I was scheduled for 3 months out for brain surgery. And I was very successful. So I was very happy, but myoclonus dystonia is a cunning condition, and I was warned that it can relearn routes around the brain stimulator, and just to prepare for that.
So after having the implant, then it resurfaces, and then you go to
it doesn't completely go away. They were hoping for 70% improvement on dystonia, weren't quite sure about the myoclonus. And I come out with like 90% improvement on both sides. It was like, it was just like I had done before, where I was like, cool, now I'm free. Now I
Right.
can go back to work. Now
But
now I
no.
can go back to my old ways, my old actions, my old thinking, my old feelings. Now I can be the best. It was an absolute repeat of my near-death experiences. Okay, now I am healed, or not healed necessarily, but I've got a good, solid treatment, and I can really conquer now and be the best employee ever. And so I go on and I go back to work way too soon and end up with chronic headaches, but I'm doing better. And within the year, the amount of relief I got was less and less and less. And there's some programming that has to go on. You have to meet with your neurologist quite often and tweak things. But I was living in Colorado. He was in Kansas, so it was a long trek.
Wow.
And I ended up in another myoclonic episode, full blown, that it couldn't stop, and flew out for an emergency programming, and kind of helped, but I was once again warned that myoclonus dystonia is cunning and it can work around, and we'll just have to play with it, and your relief might be less and less and less. Mm-hmm. I was like, all right. But I got a beautiful job offer in my career of choice, marketing and construction. And I was so gung-ho to really nail it. And I was only a few months after brain surgery, about 6 months after. And
then your mom says,
my
honey, you probably shouldn't go there, because it's not going to work out well.
She said, you really want to go in and blow it? Talk about hard love.
Thanks for all your concern. No, but she knew your condition, and she didn't want to expose you to that environment again.
She knew that I would be devastated had I taken this job and blown it, because I wasn't healthy enough. And so I agreed to move back in with her at 31 years old. I think I was 30 years old. And whew, what a hit to my ego, because here I was since 17, 18, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to, it's up to me. I've got this.
Right. You're independent.
I'm independent. Nothing's going to stop me. And here I am, 30 years old, and moving back in with my parents. Mm-hmm. And it was I am so grateful that she had that hard love and was really hard and said, you need to do this. Yeah. And that I listened, and I grieved for a whole month when I turned that job down. And I did some self-hypnosis, and I got back into this kind of state of surrender. Like, what am I doing? What did I ruin? What did I give up? Why did I do it? I am kind of on the precipice of surrender again. And so I do some self-hypnosis with that in the middle of the morning, 2 a.m., I think, 2 or 3 a.m. And I get back into this space, except for this time I know I am both over there and still very physically in my body. And it was very beautiful. I was like, oh my gosh, I can ask anything. And so I go down all these questions and all these roads, but the big one was, what am I supposed to do? Did I make the wrong decision? And I was shown I didn't, and that I needed to go on this path. I said, okay, where do I start? And there was this beautiful river, and there was books being thrown as stepping stones. And I was told I needed to write some books. And I said, there's no way. I'm not a reader. I don't like reading. Why would I write a book for other people to read if I don't even like reading? But after that, that next week, I wrote my first book about my near-death experience. And
you've written 3 books to date, and we'll give them your website at the end of the interview. But tell me about going to Dispenza's retreat and doing the meditation that ultimately liberated you from...
Yeah. So after I wrote my first book, and in the process of writing the second with my mom about the condition, I decided now's the time to figure out some things. I wanted to rewrite some programs that I'd written out of survival, because like I said, I'd been in survival from age 10, different types of survival mode, but I wrote some programs I didn't want there anymore. I knew a bunch of stuff was created in my subconscious that I just needed to access. And it was beautiful. My mom had wanted training for her dog she got, and the person she wanted just had a bunch of stuff going on that couldn't meet with her. So she found another lady, and hired her for dog training. And they just got to talking. And she was a life coach, also an NDEer, and had actually worked side by side with Dr. Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, and Bruce Lipton, the three amigos.
Wow.
And so my mom suggested, she's like, you don't have to, but it might be really helpful for you to see her. And so I said, all right, I'm willing, because I'm really determined to, use this time to the best of my advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So I go see her, we hit it off, and, we have this beautiful session, and all of this trauma I had dealt with, medical and otherwise. And, I'm just like, that's in the past. I'm ready to move forward. And she's like, you are my girl. You're going to Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreat. It's next month. It's sold out. Go anyway.
So you get there, you get in.
I get there, I get in, and I guess it was real. I didn't know much about these retreats, but they had handwritten my name on the name tag because I was a walk-in, and it's reserved. Very few people get in if you show up and walk in. And they're like, oh, you're one of those people. And I was like, okay, what do you mean by that? And I didn't know much about meditation. I only knew about mindfulness, which is when you're in your full 3D 3D present, physical. And I wanted something more.
Mm-hmm.
And I had also been reading his newer book, Supernatural, while listening to his intensive progressive program, just trying to get as much information and prepare for this retreat. And I get in Sunday and didn't sleep at all. I thought I would be so tired and so excited that I'd pass out and sleep great. I didn't sleep at all that night. Get in. I was like, oh, that's great for meditating. And, just like, I'm tired. I'm just going to go. That didn't work. And the first meditation was really hard. I didn't get there at all. But I really liked what he was saying, because he was so passionate about getting to nowhere, nothing, no place, no time, and no body. I was like, that's where I was in the first part of my near-death experience, where there's all these possibilities. So he was speaking a language I could understand. Later in that day, I did actually get back to the darkness, the blackness, the nowhere, nothing, because in nowhere, nothing, nobody, no time, no place is everything, every time, everybody, every place, everything. And in that darkness, just like the monks appeared out of the darkness, my brain and my heart appeared out of the darkness, and a piece of my near-death tunnel, that binary code, came in and circulated through my head and my brain and my heart in front of me. And I just see that, like, unlimited tunnel just like pouring in and coming through and circulating. I'm making sure that I'm loving it and sending it all this love and into my brain and rewiring. And when I come out of this meditation, I realize it just rewired myoclonus dystonia. Then that's not even what I went there for. I was doing okay with this deep brain stimulator.
Yeah.
I didn't need to heal from that, but that's what happened. And next day was 4th of July, and it was Freedom Day for the country, but it was also Freedom Day for myself, because it was the day I shut off my deep brain stimulator.
Because you knew you didn't need it
I knew I didn't need it. And then I waited. I shut it off, and usually within seconds, I'd be all, cramped or twitchy, and nothing happened, and then nothing continued to happen for the rest of the day, the rest of the week, the rest of the month, the rest of the year, extensive, on and on and on. And that was the beauty of my actual healing. But I healed, and then I got treatment, but it had to happen this way, because I then found out how powerful we are as individuals.
Right.
You
had to do it.
I had to do it. And that's obviously how I was this whole time. I had to do it. And it was absolutely beautiful. And to understand why it had come back, why the myoclonus dystonia came back after my NDE, and why it came back after the brain surgery, and then to know that it will never come back, and that I was able to do it, and that other people are able to do it, is so much more powerful.
That's a great example. Just real quickly before we end, can you tell folks what you're doing now as a death doula, and then let them know how they can get a hold of you if they would like to?
Yeah. So I found being a death doula is definitely my purpose. And I help people with chronic illness and people with grief, and helping people transition to that other side. And so much like a birth doula that helps lives transition into the world, I help with the transition out. And whether that is you're chronically ill and you need that mental transition, or you're physically ill, you're dying, I'm there to support you on a holistic, non-medical level.
How can people get a hold of you if they'd like to?
Everything you need to know about me is on my website, and that's BRI0NICLLC.com.
Okay, Brianna.
Yep, Brianna. They're the binary code,
Yeah.
and the deep brain stimulator. I thought it was really funny.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.